Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Genocidious Podcast with Isabawa and Filippo Broni, the podcast about, you guessed it, the latest music trends in Jamaica. No, I'm just kidding.
That's not
Shut
funny.
up. Today, we're joined by two very special guests, the one and only MandM and Emily Henry, two rookies in the field of genocide with savants in all things sociology and philosophy.
What is up, guys? It is fantastic to be here.
Hi, glad to be here.
Today we're going to be digging into our guest field of expertise, sociology of genocide, which is the idea surrounding this podcast. So grab your friends, maybe some alcoholicost, and maybe some fine cheese, and let's get right into it.
So, welcome to the podcast, guys. It's great to have you here. Today, we'll be talking about the sociology of genocide, if you don't mind.
Tell me, do any of you have any experience in genocide? Let's just get this out on the table.
I'm actually glad you asked this. I know it's a bit of a
Right.
touchy subject, but I do actually have some experience in this
Right.
topic. It actually happened when I was younger. It wasn't so much present as I was growing up, but as I finally reached around the age that I am now, I realized that the genocide of good rap music has occurred, and we are now living in the aftermath.
Huh.
Yeah, it's rough. I know.
That's an interesting view.
And
Why
you're
do you
from,
think... Well,
you're
Isa.
from,
Isa.
you're from,
Isa.
where are you from?
The States. Yeah.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
It's,
right. So you said kid.
All right.
Yeah. It's
So-
hard. It's hard.
So M, what do you think about genocide? Do you think it's being someone who's experienced it firsthand, do you think it's something that we should talk about more publicly?
I believe that the topic is appalling, and I am honestly just shocked to my very core that we do not discuss it more often.
Yeah, that's why Isa and I created this podcast. We think that it's such an evil thing that does happen,
And
that it should have a platform to be talked about, right?
people just
I
go on
agree.
and on about how, like, oh, we're enlightened, we're smarter now, it'll never happen again. But time and time again, it seems to happen. So the whole point of this podcast is to bring people like you who have gone through stuff and know about this type of things and have this experience to bring a spotlight to this issue that seems to go undetected.
That is such a noble cause.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you've done.
Thank
It's
you for
incredible.
being here.
Emily, what about you? You seem to be a little more knowledgeable than Eminem on the sociology behind genocide. Do you think it's something that people should talk about more?
Unfortunately, unlike Eminem, I have not experienced the genocide. However, I have studied it very profoundly. I do think it's something that needs to be talked more about because it's important. It's an important part of our history, and we need to make sure that mistakes do not repeat themselves. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Isa, you seem to have a very strong opinion. Why do you think that people do start genocides and eradicate people?
Phil, that's a great question, and I was
Reasons.
actually just about to ask that to our guest, but I think I'm gonna give my little 2 cents on it first. Why do I think people commit genocides? Because people are selfish. People want power. Nothing's ever good enough. The grass is always greener. They want to oppress. They want to place themselves on a higher platform. It's all about elevating status. If I make you feel like you're below others and I treat you like you're below others, that will in turn make me feel and be perceived as better. Now, why do they get so radical and terroristic and go out and eradicate these people? That is beyond my understanding, because that's whack.
That's
for
an
lack of a
interesting
better term.
view. I think of it more as like kind of less of a power struggle and more of just a pure hatred gone too far. Like someone ruined something that you liked, so you're gonna use your control over the country, obviously, or even smaller things like your control over a city or a neighborhood or even your group of friends, because we do see that type of stuff, like bullying. What is bullying? Just a scaled down genocide, right?
Well, I think what bullying does is it creates a genocide of one's individual likes and morality. For example, if you constantly bully people that are into K-pop, as you should, if you constantly bully people who are if you constantly bully people who are into K-pop, it'll make people afraid to like K-pop, and then in turn, quote unquote eradicate, for a better term, the whole community behind it. So bullying, in sense, is a genocide of one's individuality and their own likes and preferences, in my opinion.
That's an interesting view on bullying. What do you think, Emily?
And furries.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I don't think bullying is necessarily like a version of genocide. I think they're very different proportions on a scale. However, yeah, that I guess you could say that's how genocides start too, right? Is one person doesn't like something about somebody else, or they are trying to win a power struggle. And yeah, I guess both do start the same way. I don't know if that necessarily makes bullying a type of genocide, but there are definitely similarities between the two.
Well, yeah, of course. I wasn't saying it was more of a type of genocide, more of just like a build up to, like every extraordinary event starts with the little things, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's important to take into account.
Oh yes, extraordinary events. I see.
See, taking MandM, your history, when you experienced this genocide of good rap, did it start off in small bits, or did it start off all as one big wave?
Really, it was just the little things, and I truly believe that the origin of it was ignorance. You see, it was ignorance. You see, when I was banned from playing in Canada back in the old days, I believe that was ignorance. People did not see my message. They did not hear my music for what it was. They just saw the superficial level of it, and that ignorance led to the ban of my music in a beautiful country.
Crazy.
And what about the ignorance of the people who just allowed this to happen? Do you think people allowing stuff like a serious genocide happening, is it their fault just as much as the perpetrators?
I believe that the perpetrators are the main offenders, but everybody who participates in it shares a little bit of the blame. Because if somebody is ignorant towards something, then they act upon that ignorance, and then instead of speaking up against it, you turn a blind eye, then you are as well responsible for what happens. Maybe not as much as the perpetrator, but you're still there.
And to what point do you two think our guests, Emily Henry and MandM, and even Phil Baroni, at what point do you think that ignorance makes you accountable, right? Now, maybe not for genocide specifically, but in general, ignorance tends and can lead to some unfortunate situations. So even if you're not directly the perpetrator or the cause of said situation, where do you think ignorance plays a part? And do you think ignorance could be punishable by proxy?
That's a tough one. It's all right, MandM. Things happen. You know, we know you have a life. But like,
sorry, Haley's calling.
Yeah. I was about to say.
It's kind of like an interesting thing to think about. You know, like what is going on right now in the world that we're being ignorant to, that maybe in 10 years could become something as important as a genocide. You know, and should we be held accountable for things that we may not even be aware of? It's
exactly across the globe. There are things going on that, like, there's the whole thing. Excuse me. MandM is telling me she's having difficulties. Across the globe, there are things going on that, like that whole thing in China with the Muslims and all that, and
which in its own form is the starting of genocide, right?
Exactly. Like, and we here aren't doing anything about it, so to speak. Like, we can repost an Instagram post, or a story, and that's about it. That's the extent to it. So is our ignorance of their situation that could possibly turn into a genocide? At what point can we be held accountable?
That's
here's the thing: like you're saying that posting on Instagram is the extent of what you can do, but that's not true, and that's not necessarily ignorance. That's just like people, I guess, laziness or afraid to do something more. But there are lots of things that we could do to try and help the Muslims of China right now, and we just don't. You know, but we have that power. We have that power to help them, but for whatever reason, we're, I guess, choosing not to. And is that ignorance? That's another question. Is that ignorance? Are we turning a blind eye to it, or are we just, I don't know, you know?
It's an interesting stance, of course. But the thing is, when we're trying to define ignorance in situations like these, is it ignorance to not like pay attention to these? can the people who did try at least a little bit, could they be called ignorant or just not as involved as they should have been? Like, I feel like that's the difference between what we're talking about. Like, the thing with China and their basically concentration camps with the Muslims, it's not that people are turning a blind eye to it. It's more just people not doing as much as they should, right?
May I throw in my 2 cents?
Absolutely,
Sure.
please. We welcome it.
Well, you see, one person, 2 people, a whole group of people could stand in front of a war machine and it would still keep rolling. It would move forward,
Bars.
even though those people are in the way. So-
That's true.
At the end of the day, if you keep yourself educated and you do what you can and you do all that is in your power to stay conscious and do what you can to sort of do as best as you can to not support what is going on in the world, then you are essentially doing all you can do, because these issues are so much bigger than one person or 2 people or even a community. This is a global thing and we need more than individual people to stop it. But by doing what you can, you are doing all you can do.
That's
Let's
beautifully
look
said.
at the people in power right now, like our governments and the UN and all those things like that. I don't know if it's because of ignorance or scared to have conflict with China, which is a huge, country with an army, a very powerful country, a superpower. Can they be held accountable to the deaths of all these Muslims? Is it ignorance that's stopping them from intervening, or are we ignorant to the possible conflicts that come and consequences that come with intervening? And that's why we're so quick to act and quick to say this is wrong, we need to do something, but we're ignorant to the possible consequences that could be worse than what's going on in China.
Huh. Well, of course, there's a whole other discussion there, but since we are coming around to the end of the podcast, I think that's important that we recognize the fact that it's more like MandM said, it's more than just us. Like, this is global scale bullying that could escalate to something more, and it's happening in our day. Like, it's not that we should be doing more, it's that all of us as a collective, one collective, should be doing more,
Yeah, you're 100% right, but maybe you don't know what video I'm talking about, but there's a video that went viral a few years ago of this one person who started doing like this really weird dance on like a beach, or there was like a beach party, and eventually like one person joined him, and then another person joined him, and then another
Right.
person joined him.
Yeah.
And like a
Yeah.
huge movement, and like the entire beach was like crowded with people doing like just feeling and like doing their dance. So to have that one movement, like what you were saying, Phil, for all of us to be united as one to stop this, it does start as an individual. Somebody has to do something, and whether that's us or maybe political leaders, I guess that's up to us to decide, right?
I think that's a good place to end things off. Strong stance. Don't you think, Isa?
Yeah, absolutely. But at first, I couldn't help but pay attention. I as much as I tried to pay attention, I was just so distracted on my phone about Raid Shadow Legends. Phil, would you like to give a word to that?
Oh, how could I forget? All right, everyone. Before we end things off, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends, one of the biggest mobile role-playing games of 2020, and it's totally free. Currently, almost 10 million users have joined Raid over the last 6 months, and it's one of the most impressive games in its class, with detailed models, environments, and smooth 60 frames per second animations. All the champions in the game can be customized with unique gear that changes your strategic buffs and abilities. The dungeon bosses have some ridiculous skills of their own, and figuring out the perfect party and strategy to overtake them is a lot of fun. Currently, with over 30,000 reviews, Raid has almost a perfect score on the Play Store. The community is growing fast, and the highly anticipated new Faction Wars feature is now live. You might even find my squad out there in the arena. It's easier to start now more than ever with Raid's program for new players. You get a new daily login reward for the first 90 days that you play the game. So what are you waiting for? Go click the podcast description. There's a little link there. Click it, and you'll get 50,000 silver and a free epic champion as part of the new player program to start your journey. Good luck, and I'll see you there.
Sorry, Phil, I couldn't help. I wasn't paying attention. I was too busy playing Raid Shadow Legends on my mobile device. Don't forget to click that link, get 50,000 gold and a free epic champion. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Genocidious Podcast. I would like to thank our guests for coming. And Emily Henry, please give yourself a little ways and a round of applause for your wonderful performance. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, sir. I hope you enjoyed, and don't forget to look at our merch store. We just released a new set of Genocidious branded mugs and headbands. So don't forget to check out the store. We'll see you next time.
Stay safe, stay educated.